From the heart of the Space City to the heart of Gen Z, welcome to Next Gen Conversation. Not Dad's Talk Radio. Ethan talks to you about the issues and events that matter to our generation. This is the Next Gen Report with Ethan Buchanan.
Hey, everybody. What a great show we have coming up. I'm excited. In the third segment, we will be joined by Dudley Brown. He is the president of the National Gun Rights Association. National Association of Gun Rights, I'm sorry. I think it's about time we had a good refresher on gun rights and gun responsibility. If you listen to the show for a while, you know this is an issue that I am passionate about. It's probably my biggest issue is gun rights. I'm very concerned about the Second Amendment, about being able to keep and bear arms, about doing so responsibly. So I think now is a good time to, especially with everything going on in Minneapolis, kind of have a little bit of a refresher, kind of talk about that again. Just because I think it's pertinent. I want to preface that with talking about a little bit what's going on in Virginia. And you may not be paying very close attention to it, but you should be. It's very important stuff that's happening over there. Or I guess could be happening. Before we really dig into it, I want to give you, just because we recently had an election there and a lot of people might not really know what's going on, I want to preface this with who is in charge in Virginia. So I'm going to play you this video. This is Abigail Spanberger. I believe this was when she was still campaigning. Here is she talking about all the various gun restrictions and regulations that she supports. And then after we listen to this, we'll talk about some of the legislation that is on the table in Virginia right now, and then we will kind of go from there. So let's start. Here's Abigail Spanberger to tell us about all the different ways she wants to restrict your Second Amendment.
It's why I support extremist protective orders. It's why I support limiting magazine size. It's why I support ensuring that the age at which someone can buy a handgun is the same as the age at which someone can buy an assault-style rifle. And currently, you can buy an AR-15 at 18 and a handgun at 21. And so
okay, I'm going to stop her right there. I think that should be changed. I agree with her on that because she's right. Even here in Texas, you can buy a long gun, a shotgun, or a rifle at 18 years old, but you do have to be 21 to buy a handgun. I think that's ridiculous. She's right on that. I want the handgun age lowered. She wants the rifle age raised. That's the difference between us.
So that disparity is problematic. And it's why I support a production stoppage on assault-style weapons. And these are the things I support. But
a production stoppage on assault-style weapons. So, I mean, she talked about a lot there. The extremist protective orders. That's basically saying if the government decides you're an extremist, they can take away your guns. Great. Who's defining extremist? Is it you, Abigail Spanberger? Because I believe you're crazy for the things that you say. Does that mean I'm an extremist? I think those beliefs should bar you from public office. Does that make me an extremist? I'm sure she would probably say yes. But that gives you a good idea of who we're dealing with here in Virginia. Now, believe it or not, it gets worse from there, Virginia gun owners. This piece of legislation has exploded over the weekend, and this is something that I'll talk to Dudley Brown a little bit about when he joins us later on. There is a bill, I believe it is now before the Virginia Senate, that would basically turn a whole bunch of people into overnight felons. It's pretty insane. So here it is. A bill to ban assault weapons was voted out of committee in the Virginia Senate, and it essentially makes gun ownership illegal in the Commonwealth. Its author is State Senator Saddam Aslan Salim, who was born in Bangladesh. In Virginia's code, an assault weapon, quote-unquote, is defined as any semi-automatic centerfire rifle or pistol that expels single or multiple projectiles. Okay, so just to make an illustration here, this is my standard everyday carry firearm. This is a 6-hour P365. This is a centerfire semi-automatic pistol. This bill, or this gun, would be illegal under this bill because this is what comes with it, a 12-round magazine. If this bill passes and I'm caught with this firearm, which is perfectly legal here in the state of Texas, I can buy and purchase this weapon without even having a license. in the state of Texas. This is a common self-defense weapon. I would be a criminal, a worst of the worst criminal in the state of Virginia. That's insane. Most firearms fit under this. This is a $500 common handgun. They're easy to come by. It's not hard to find these. It's a completely normal pistol, but under Virginia law, it's an assault pistol. Ooh, it's super scary. It's an assault pistol. If signed into law, it would turn millions of law-abiding gun owners in Virginia into felons with a stroke of a pen. What's really crazy about this is where this guy is from. He was born in Bangladesh. I believe he's a naturalized U.S. citizen, which is fine. I completely support people coming to America and becoming Americans and being naturalized citizens. This guy's not an American. He's not. He's just not an American. Part of being an American is having a culture that allows for self-defense, that respects the right to self-defense. This guy's not an American. I mean, it's just plain and simple. I mean, if you look at his naturalization oath, every naturalized American has to swear by this oath. I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America. I wonder what's in the Constitution. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This bill that this man wrote and is working to pass is a direct infringement of the Second Amendment. You can argue about whether or not it's necessary, but there it is, plain and simple. He's infringing on the Second Amendment, and he swore an oath to support it. I am of the opinion, and you can tell me if this is crazy, but if you essentially lie in your naturalization oath, become a citizen, use your position as a citizen to work your way into a position of power, and then work to suppress the right of Native Americans, I don't believe you should be in this country. I believe you should be kicked out of public office. I believe your citizenship should be revoked, and I believe you should be deported. Because again, our rights are important. My right to keep and bear arms is important. The right of every Virginian to keep and bear arms is important. You may ask yourself, Ethan, why do you care? This is happening in Virginia. You're a Texan. Nobody's ever going to touch your guns. Probably not. I will grant it to you. Probably not. But do I really want to take the risk of allowing it in one place so that it can then spread over time into the state of Texas? No, I don't. No, I don't. Because I guarantee you, people like him are in the state of Texas and working their way into the halls of power right now. And it's preposterous. All right, we'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit more about immigration, ICE in Minneapolis, and then Dudley Brown in the third segment. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay tuned. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. Real quick, go give me a follow on X, @_Ethan Buchanan, BUCHANAN. It's a great place to be. It's where all the fun things happen. It's where I get in arguments with people, although I've been doing that on TikTok a little bit more recently as well. @_Ethan Buchanan on TikTok. We have a lot of fun online. Follow me everywhere. Just search Ethan Buchanan. I'll probably come up. All right. We're going to talk in this segment about immigration in Minneapolis because there's a lot going on. There's a lot we don't know. First of all, Greg Bavino, he's the commander of Customs and Border Patrol. He's been doing a great job. He's essentially kind of the extension of ICE. So what has happened in these sanctuary cities is ICE is trying to do their job. They can't because of all this interference. They can't get local police departments to help them to keep radical agitators off their back. So they bring in Customs and Border Protection to help them. That should be the job of local law enforcement. That should be what local law enforcement is doing. The federal agents say, hey, we need help. We've got a mob. Come quell it. And then that's what happens. The federal law enforcement in places like Minneapolis, or the state law enforcement, I'm sorry, hasn't been doing that. So we need more federal law enforcement. That's what Greg Bavino has been doing. What Greg Bavino should be doing in a perfect world is just being on the actual physical border, patrolling it, not doing interior enforcement. That's what ICE is for, right? But they've had to kind of work collaboratively on interior enforcement. So there's that. He's been pulled out of Minneapolis. There have been some rumors that he was fired. That apparently is not the case. He was not fired. He was not demoted. He was just moved out. They're taking him out. They're sending Tom Homan in. I think that's great. Tom Homan is the GOAT. I like Tom Homan. If they're sending him in, that means progress. So if it's just switching folks out, I'm fine with that. If they fire Greg Bovino, God help me, there will be hell to pay with the base, because the base likes Greg Bovino. I like Greg Bovino. But I would love to see Greg Bovino on the border. That's like the perfect place for him, in my opinion. But anyway, all of this kind of comes as the left continues to frame what the conservatives and the Republicans and the administration want as radical. What we want isn't radical. What we want is our country. That's normal to want. That's normal for people to want their country, and to want their country to be for them and to be safe and to be secure, and for illegal aliens to be arrested and deported, especially if they're violent. That's really the vast majority of what we're asking for. Up front, let's get the criminals, the violent people. And then once they're all out, we're also going to go grab the average everyday illegal alien, but we'll focus for now, just to be nice, on the violent criminals. Here is Tricia McLaughlin. She is, I believe, a press secretary in some capacity. Let me see exactly. Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. So not a press secretary, I'm sorry. But here she is basically saying, listen, we just want to arrest these people that you already have in prison and deport them. Stop letting them back onto the street out of prison. Turn them over to us and we will deport them. Here she is basically asking for that.
My understanding is he's being a little bit misleading here, or a lot misleading, by saying that those 1,360 criminal illegal aliens are not sitting in the county and city jails, which is exactly where they are. We know that last year, under Walz's leadership, that those city and county jails released 470 criminal illegal aliens. So again, what the president, what Secretary Noem have been asking for is that level of cooperation before they release a criminal illegal alien onto the streets, to give us notification so that we can come and pick them up and they're not going back onto the street to re-perpetuate crimes against Americans. And secondly, when we are seeing rioters, we're seeing things spiral out of control, assaults, obstruction of law enforcement, which is a federal crime, as we've mentioned before, that those state and local governments and law enforcement are allowed to answer our calls for backup so no one gets hurt.
And again, if we are given that, if the authorities, the federal authorities are given that, all of these things that the left is complaining about disappear. You won't see the, violent, rough-looking arrests where we have to chase people down and tackle them and force them into cars. We'll just pick them up in the jail and we'll move them from a state or local prison or jail into a federal detention center and then deported. And then we won't get the ugly videos of people on the street getting deported. We won't have to bring in CBP to kind of, frankly, jackboot people in order to allow ICE to do their job. Again, these are things that are necessitated by the incooperation we are seeing from these state and local officials. So all we're asking for is to stop doing that. Now, President Trump has, I believe, it looks like, made some progress on that front. So here is President Trump talking about this call that he had with Tim Walz, and I believe Jacob Frey was also either on that call or he had a call with Jacob Frey. And it looks like after this recent shooting and death, maybe, just maybe, Tim Walz and Jacob Frey are kind of starting to see reason and realizing that, frankly, on a raw level, they do not have the capacity to keep this up. They can't deal with this tension as long as the federal government can. And so it looks like they might be starting to comply. Here's Donald Trump talking about that. This is with Sid and Friends in the morning. I'm not sure which station this show is on, but that's who it is. Here's Trump with them.
But I had two very good talks. I had Jacob Frey and I had Governor Walz, and I mean they were great calls. So let's see how they report it. But they were very nice calls, very respectful.
So is there a possibility, President Trump, of some type of compromise? I read that some of the Guard will be leaving the state of Minnesota, some type of compromise to, I guess, make those guys feel like they're in charge, even though, God help us.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. What we need is their criminals. They have criminals.
All right, so that's kind of what got people up in arms, is the idea of a compromise and pulling CBP out and stuff like that. A lot of conservatives are looking at that as sort of a defeat, and it could be, and it also could not be. If we pull CBP out because we don't need them because state and local law enforcement is doing their job, then that's a win. If we can put federal resources back to work, on the actual border itself to make sure we don't have more people coming in, or, just deploy them to other places where we're not getting cooperation, where they can be more useful, that's great news, right? So this could be a massive win. What's getting people kind of a little concerned is the idea that we might slow down on immigration enforcement. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it's worth pointing out that's what some Republicans want. Even Greg Abbott, who you would think Greg Abbott, being in Texas, would know better. But here he is. I mean, this is Houston Chronicle reporting this, so maybe take it with a grain of salt. But Greg Abbott says ICE needs to recalibrate mission after deadly Minnesota shooting. He said on Monday the White House needs to recalibrate immigration and customs enforcement mission meant to rebuild public trust after immigration agents shot and killed a second protester in Minnesota. This wasn't a protester. This was a rioter. This was a obstructionist. This was not a protester. Abbott said immigration officials should get back to what they wanted to do to begin with, and that is to remove people from the country who are here illegally. Well, that's what we've been doing. So I don't know what Greg Abbott is talking about here. And again, I'll give Greg Abbott the benefit of the doubt on this just because it's a Houston Chronicle article. And it's frankly not a paper that I think is great. There's a reason the mayor of the city, who is a Democrat, by the way, won't even talk to this page. It's because they're, a little bit shaky, we'll say. In my opinion, allegedly. Please don't sue me, Houston Chronicle. But I think Greg Abbott, if he is making the point that it appears the Houston Chronicle is trying to make it sound like he's making, again, the mission has never changed. It has always been deport illegal aliens. Start with the criminals and work your way down. I should say the extra violent criminals and work your way down. The perception that the mission has changed to just bullying Americans comes exclusively from the fact that the radical left keeps pushing the bar. They keep escalating. We've talked about this on the show before. Go back and listen to past podcasts if you really want to hear this point ironed out. The Democrats are raising the bar again and again and again, and when that happens, ICE has no option but to respond in kind. And then, of course, that gets clipped. That's what makes it to the headlines. Those are the videos you see, and it looks bad. All of this could go away if the Democrats just behave, recognize they lost on the immigration issue, and get in line with where the rest of the country is at. All right, we will be right back with more of the Next Gen Report. I'm super excited to talk about gun rights. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, so with everything going on in Minneapolis, everything going on in Virginia that we talked about in the first segment, it's a good time to kind of reestablish, what gun rights are. What are gun responsibilities? Because that's part of it. Rights come with responsibilities. Without responsibilities, rights just become chaos, frankly. So I thought somebody great to have this discussion with us would be Dudley Brown. He's the president of the National Gun Rights Association. Here he is, Mr. Brown. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So let me start with, I want to get your take on everything that went down in Minneapolis over the weekend, because I've heard mixed reviews from both sides of the aisle. I've heard right-wingers that are saying, oh, this was a violation of the Second Amendment. I think it's pretty clear that some folks in the Trump administration kind of flubbed the messaging a little bit. Some of the things I've heard Kash Patel say kind of imply that, oh, walking up and shaking the hand of a police officer with a gun on your person could, wind you getting shot. And obviously that's not what we want. But at the same time, we want law enforcement to be able to do their job and protect themselves. So let me just ask you, having seen what we've all seen now, know what we all know now, what's your take on all of that?
Well, I've spent the last 36 hours responding to all the comments, some of those senior high-ranking Trump administration officials really stepping on their own toes, saying things that are just patently ludicrous. Now, of course, many people want to defend both them and the president in his comments today, saying that that's not what they meant. But as someone who's represented gun owners for 33 years, I don't have the luxury of giving everybody an extra pass. I have to look at what politicians say and try and correct it. And in this case, where what the FBI director said was ludicrous, he was inferring that you can't actually practice your Second Amendment rights as long as there's a protest. And when you think about that, so he didn't support Kyle Rittenhouse. Actually, he did, and so did many of the people in the administration. And it's the same situation in many ways until you get down to the intent of the person and what they actually did. We don't know what Mr. Preddy did in most cases. At least I don't know. I haven't seen evidence that showed exactly what his intent was, whether he truly interfered. I'm not even going to pretend I did. However, the act of showing up at a protest with a firearm is not against the law in most states and shouldn't be against the law in most states. If there is a law like that, I will violate it every day, and I don't give two craps what it says, because that is what our country was founded on. We were rebelling, going to protests, telling the British we don't agree with you, and yes, they carried guns. Imagine that. So,
yeah.
So this like spate of comments that frankly got bizarre. DHS Director Kristi Noem said some silly things. That's not really out of her character. But then so did the Secretary of the Treasury. I mean, if you read his quote, it shows you the man's never picked up a gun. I think he said he had 2 cartridges. And he was obviously meant magazines. Yeah. And it shows that Mr. Bessent is a blue blood who frankly doesn't know the first thing about firearms, and probably has armed security everywhere, has gone his whole life. So pardon us if we don't want to take your advice on civil rights. We don't care what any administration says. You have the right to protect yourself in public areas, and you should. That's not the crime. Never accept that as the crime. The crime is if you interfere with law enforcement. And of course, if you're carrying and you interfere with law enforcement, yes, it does add a level of the law enforcement's response. And it probably adds, in many cases, the criminal penalties involved. But just the act of carrying at an event in which you're not committing a crime, there's nothing wrong with that.
And that's kind of the point that I've been making on this show, and I've seen other people make it as well, is, being a gun owner, being a gun carrier, that comes with extra responsibilities. You don't want to be the person that's escalating, because you can escalate really quickly, and you can escalate quite a bit higher than anybody else. So let me ask you this. How would you say gun owners should balance that? Where's the responsibility to kind of, keep the peace almost?
Well, first of all, your Second Amendment rights are not dictated by which party you're in and which political viewpoint you have. So Mr. Preddy is an American citizen, and he's legally eligible to possess the gun, and state law says he can carry it there. We defend him just as we defend a conservative doing the same thing, like we defended Kyle Rittenhouse, who had to use a firearm. Mr. Preddy didn't. And so how do we tell gun owners? Well, let me back up just a hair, Ethan, because my organization, along with Texas Gun Rights, was the organization that passed constitutional carry in Texas. We're very proud of that.
Thank you, by the way.
$2.2 million in 8 years fighting against the Republican establishment in your state, duking it out. And I spent a lot of time there, both in Austin and throughout the state, trying to pass that law. And they finally passed, frankly, because they were tired of us beating them over the head in elections. But prior to that, you couldn't carry a handgun openly. You couldn't carry them in certain places. There were quite a few no carry zones. There still are a number of them. And, I won't tell people to violate the law, but I violate the law all the time. Don't give a crap what they say about no carry zones. Frankly, It's a God-given right. It was given to every human on the planet, including people in France and Switzerland. And it's not really subject to borders, although we're trying to conform the law to fit that way. So to a large degree, we tell people, push that envelope. Do not give up your rights, because once you lose them, they're gone. Mm-hmm. So in this case, this insidious nature of comments that came out from the administration were extremely dangerous long term. Like the comment I heard about having a handgun at a protest and extra magazines somehow meant you were there with malicious intent. Mm. Come on. Millions of Americans carry every day with extra magazines. I carry 2 guns every day with extra magazines, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And when people ask me why am I carrying, I say easy. I carry a handgun to fight my way back to my assault rifle. So that's a great way to make the libtards' heads explode. And sometimes I'm wondering if it's going to make the Republicans' heads explode. So what's the responsibility? To act legally. That's it. I mean, don't imagine that. Don't go up and impede law enforcement, especially in an active investigation. Don't try to get in front of them and stop them. Yes, that would be a problem. If Mr. Preddy did that, then of course he should have been arrested. Whether he should have had deadly force used against him, I haven't seen all the details, and I don't think we're going to know that for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been saying online recently. I forgot where I posted it, but I said somewhere, I carry a firearm with me on my person almost every day. Some days I'm lazy and a slacker, but almost every day I carry a firearm, and I've never been shot at by the cops. I've never been shot at by anyone, because again, I'm following the law. I'm being a reasonable person. I've even carried my firearms into places where I do feel unsafe, and that's why we have a firearm. It is kind of a fine line to walk. It really just comes down to what's reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't agree with, from what I can tell, Mr. Preddy's viewpoint was, and clearly I'm a conservative, but that doesn't obviate his right. We always react to you can't bash an armed gay. You don't have rights because you're in a specific group, whether it's conservative, Republican, heterosexual, homosexual. You don't have special rights. I don't believe in any of that garbage. You have rights because you're a human being,
right?
And you should have the civil right of being able to carry the tools for self-defense. That's why we're particularly proud of Texas and the other 28 states that allow constitutional carry and don't interfere. You don't actually have to go beg government for permission. Gee, big brother, could I have the tools for self-defense when in fact it's really a God-given right? We'd love to get it up a higher number. We're still working on it in North Carolina and many other states.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about both the expansion of gun rights, because I'm a big believer of everyone should carry everywhere all the time with no exceptions. Real quick, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be right back to talk about that expansion, and then some places where your rights as an American, as just a human being, are under attack. And unfortunately, one of those places is Virginia, which I thought was supposed to be purple or red, but I guess not. We'll be right back after this quick break to talk about more of your gun rights. All right, and we are back. The guest is Dudley Brown, National Association for Gun Rights. I may have messed that up one time. Tell me, what is the website?
Gunrights.org.
Gunrights.org. If you conceal carry, or if you constitutional carry, I should say, in the state of Texas, you owe this guy a big old thank you, and I conceal carry and constitutional carry all of the time. So thank you. I appreciate it. It looks like you're probably going to have some work cut out for you in Virginia. We've got what I think is probably the most ridiculous piece of gun legislation I've ever seen in my life. I have sitting on my desk right now a Sig Sauer P365. It's got a 12-round mag in it. It's completely legal here in the state of Texas. If this law passes and I take that firearm with me into Virginia, I'll be a felon overnight.
Yeah, there's a whole slew of legislation right now in the Virginia legislature. Understand that the old school, old world Virginia Democrats are all gone virtually. Most of them have been moved out or retired. These are a group of very radical Marxists who are now running the Virginia legislature. It's very much similar to the state I live in, right? And I'm sitting in right now, Colorado. They're not a whole lot of compliant, kind of corrupt pro-business union fat cats running the show. Now it's just straight up Marxists, and Che Guevara would be happy. So they are running a whole litany of gun control there. An assault weapons ban is the big one, of course. Now they are right now the bill grandfathers the existing owners, but it also bans greater than 10-round magazines, and it doesn't grandfather that. So think about that you might be able to own the AR-15, but you can't. What, you're going to go out and buy a 10-round magazine, 5-round magazine?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You've fought these battles a number of times before, I imagine. And I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, this might pass, but it'll just, face the lawsuits and it'll get shut down. Let me ask you this. One, is that what you think is going to happen? And two, if that does happen, how long does that take? And how many legal, peaceable American gun owners are they going to sweep up in the meantime?
Well, right now, my organization has, I don't know how many, 7 active assault weapons ban and magazine ban lawsuits around the country. We put them in all the circuit courts, so we're in most of the circuit courts. We have, and we undoubtedly would file against Virginia. Now, that's an expensive proposition. So those people who are sitting back saying, "Yeah, I'm not worried about it," I mean, that's an easy thing to say, but somebody has to do the heavy lifting. And you might think there's some magic bullet that somehow the firearms industry is just going to pour money into lawsuits. So far, that has not happened. It really hasn't at all. Everybody's waiting for someone else to do it. So I tell people, you've got to get involved or sell your guns. You might want to sell them now while they're at a high, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't get involved, numbers are what count in legislative body, whether it's Congress or your state legislature. It's intense numbers of people who get active. And you might get active with your state level group. We certainly think you should get active with a national group. And we are very careful to plug you in. If you join NAGR at gunrights.org, we're very happy to plug you into the state level group. Now in Texas Gun Rights, TXGR, is the organization that really we founded and handed off to Chris McNutt. And if there's any one person who you should thank for Texas's constitutional carry law, it's really Chris McNutt. And Chris made it his mission and did a great job at it. But it took going after Republican speakers of the House. You can't make apologies for politicians, and you can't, as an activist, you can't say, "I'll let somebody else do it." That's called the free rider syndrome. You got to be active in it. And so those people in Virginia right now are facing a very ugly world. Now, they also have a permit to purchase law, much like we had passed here in the state of Colorado last session, 2025. And that's a little bit more insidious, but that's likely to pass as well. So not only will you not be able to buy new ones, but I believe if they pass the permit to purchase, you'll actually still have to go through a class to possess them. It's so bizarre that these people don't quite understand, but a lot of them are just challenging the Supreme Court and the Bruin decision. And that's the basis for most of all of our lawsuits on magazines and semi-autos, is that we're trying to prove in court that these are in common use And that means then, if once we prove that, then the state has to prove that there's a historical analog for that gun control back in the founding era, founding fathers era. Of course, they can't.
Right.
Now, you just saw the Supreme Court Justice Jackson make an argument in front of the Supreme Court this week and said that trying to remember how she put it, she basically used the slave laws that banned former slaves from getting guns as a historical analog to support her position.
Is that really?
How does a black justice quote? I mean, why doesn't she just wear white robes?
Oh, good grief.
She might as well. And instead of the black robes of a justice, she should just wear KKK garb.
I mean,
because that's the argument
preposterous.
she's making. It's really not even funny, but kind of dystopian that we're arguing about this in this manner.
It kind of gives you I think a good example of how ridiculous, the anti-gun arguments are. And I mean, I say this all the time, and you kind of hear it, and you don't really even think about it, but firearms are a deeply ingrained part of American history and culture. It's kind of become a joke. We see the memes about, how Americans take a shower and there's a Glock in the corner, how Americans eat breakfast and it's eggs, bacon, and a Glock in the corner. And, on the one hand, it's a funny joke, but on the other hand, it's true. And so to rip such a core founding plank from the United States of America, you really do have to get ridiculous. You really do have to reach these points of, what you're saying and doing is preposterous because there's no other way to take out that cornerstone of American society.
The mental gymnastics required to come up with the arguments for banning the most common firearm in America, which is the AR-15. In fact, it is a little bit bizarre. In fact, when we were doing our court case, we actually compared that and said the AR-15 is the same popularity as a Ford F-150 pickup. And that's the most common vehicle on the road today is the F-150. It's actually 3 times more common than an F-150.
Wow.
And the F-150 is the most common. So, and what's the most common handgun sold in America? It's a Glock 19. Mm-hmm. And that Glock 19 is banned in California now. So we're trying very desperately to get that up into the Supreme Court. We've got a number of options that we hope will be granted cert. We don't care. It doesn't have to be our case. We're happy to do anybody else's case, and we're going to help because we want the Supreme Court now. While we think we have a majority, we think we have it. Mm-hmm. And Justice Roberts is always a question. There's certainly some weak knees there, but we want to get that case heard, and we think Justice Clarence Thomas, while he's still there, who rewrites it the same way he wrote Bruin, and he'll write it very broadly. And we think we'll take care of a whole bunch of really bad gun controls in America, magazine bans, assault weapons bans, and a whole slew of things that we all want to fight on.
All right, real quick in these last 30 seconds, if people want to support you and what you're doing to bring these lawsuits, what can they do? Well,
you can follow me on Twitter, which is really the wild, wild west nowadays. It's not being throttled at all at Gun Rights Prez, P-R-E-Z. That's my handle. And National Gun Rights is our organization. There's also our website, and you can sign up for our email alerts at gunrights.org. We have a number of petitions, especially with bills in Congress, and we'd love to have you on our list. We think we can earn your support by showing you our activism and showing you not only what we did, but what we're working on right now.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on the Next Gen Report. I am Ethan Buchanan. We will be back Sunday at 7 p.m. on AM 950 KPRC.